Hi, I'm Matty Dawes and join me here today at the Weston Pools fishery and we're down the clay pit. Now I'm going to show you a devastating tactic to catch more F1 shallow this summer, and it's going to be using slop. So let's jump on the box and get through how you can use this deadly tactic to catch you more fish. Firstly, let's take a look at the bait you're going to need to be fishing with this slop. Now, slop fishing, you want the fish in the top column of the water, say 2 foot and above. So you need a ground bait which is going to linger in these depths so you can catch them, but also it attracts them into the peg. So I've kept it dead simple today. I've just mixed up some Super Crush Expander. This is perfect for when you throw it in or cup it from a height. It makes a splat on the water, makes a nice cloud, the fish come in dead attracted to it, and you can keep putting fish in the net. Now with mixing this, you may ask, do I make it into a slop first or just feed it, make it into a ground bait then add throughout the day? I like to add it throughout the day so I can change the consistency. So when I mix this, I just mix it like a normal ground bait, nice and fluffy, and have it in a bucket behind me or a tub on my side tray. Now what this allows me to do, when I run out of the mix I'm using, if I feel the fish are really high and I need to pour some slop in and add more water, I can do that. If I feel the fish have dropped a little bit deeper, I can make it a bit firmer so the fish where they're sitting. So it's nice and versatile and you're not going to waste any of your bait. Now when you're making it, just make it nice and fluffy and you can add your water to it. Now you may be thinking, well, what hook baits are we going to be using today? Now the main hook bait we're going to be using is a pellet. These fish here are fed on pellets a lot, they're caught ever so much, but a little edge I like to give. With the slop, it's a nice cloud, so the fish are going to come in through racing, looking for any particles. Now to use a standard normal pellet, it doesn't give that quick selective thinking. Yes, it's going to catch you a lot of fish, but with this Robin Red pellet, either a 6mm or a 4mm, it just comes through, and as the fish dash through the higher layers, they'll see a red fleck and they'll be more inclined to just snatch at it. Now sometimes the fishing can be really good and fast and effective, and this is when I like to hook my baits. And what I mean by this is I like to fish a big 14 hook and put baits on it so it attracts the fish. Big visual bait when I drop my slop in and drop my rig in. Now for this, I've simply brought some Pro Expanders in 4 and 6mm and some white maggots. Nice and big, these white maggots, so I can put 3 or 4 in a hook, or I can put a 4mm or a 6mm expander. Now you may be thinking, well, the expander might come off when you're fishing shallow. If you use a 14 hook, it gives you a nice firm grip and you can keep catching them fish. Like I said, when it's nice and bright and the fish are coming through, darting through, you want a visual hook bait. It's no good fishing, say, a single maggot or say a 2mm expander. The fish is not going to be inclined to pick it up as fast as they would with a big nice visual bait. So that's the hook baits we've got today. That's the ground bait. So let's get on, see how we can mix it. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to go about this so you can get your ground bait right before you can get your slop fishing. So first of all, I've got a nice clean tub and I've got my ground bait here. So what I like to do with all my ground baits is measure it out so I understand how much I've got for quantities and water. So I'm going to put just 2 pints in for this. So put first pint in, second pint. Now there's no need to give it a mix round, you're not using 2 different types of ground bait, it's just a single one. So just going to put it out of the way there. Now I've got my tub of water. So ideally, I'm going to use, say, a 1.5 pints of water to 2 pints of ground bait. Now this is really important. I feel when you first mix your ground bait, you want to get as much water as you can into the mix on your first initial hit of water. This because the particles will all get soaked up properly. Nothing's going to float or drop too deep. It's all going to be nice and perfect. So I'm going to get the one in there and then I'm going to go half again. Now this is where the messy part comes. I'm going to get my fingers in, whiz it round. Now as always, it looks a bit like a soup. It looks perfect for your slop now, but as you can see, as I move this around now, it's going to get firmer and firmer and firmer. So just make sure the water's mixed in, there's no dry bits anywhere. And now you're going to leave that. Say I like to do it 30 to 40 minutes, 40 minutes ideally, just so you can allow it to settle properly. Now, bit of Blue Peter style, I've got some made earlier. So one important thing is when you've got your ground bait now, it's important to put it through a 4mm riddle. Now normally I like to use my ground bait for a 6mm, but with this fishing I want it nice and fine, so there's not loads of big particles floating around within my slop. So I've got a 4mm, I've just popped it through the riddle now. Just give it 30-40 minutes before and it's nice and fluffy and ready to go. So all I do now is put it in a tub on my side tray with a mixing tub which is just clean for the minute, and a tub of water. And then what I like to do is say get 2 handfuls of my ground bait, add the water to a feel of consistency I need it, so whether I need it really wet or slightly damp, just so where the fish are feeding in my peg, just makes it nice and easy so you can catch more fish. Now before I show you the technique of feeding and fishing, let's get on with some rigs. Now I've kept it dead simple today. I've just set 2 rigs up. Now the first one is an F1 shallow set at 2 foot, and the second one's a dibber set at 1 foot. So I'll just run you through the little setup I've got on these. Now they're both with 11 Dura slip for a short stop. This just enables me the fish to glide out the peg, but I can net them with ease. Main line's both the same. It's 017 power line, nice and robust, nice and durable. What I want when I'm fishing shallow, you got your net, your lines in your net all the time. The last thing you want is any damage on your line, so 017 is nice and durable. Now you may notice on the deeper rig I've got a bristle float, an F1 shallow. This is in a 4x10, so it's quite positive for 2 foot, but it's got a bristle so I can see all the indications and signs when I'm fishing a little bit deeper. Now with the dibber, I've chosen to use this 12 inches and less, say up to even like 3 inches if the fish come right up into the slop. This because the fish will be aggressive, they'll give you positive bites and you can get away with a dibber. But if deeper we might miss any signs, and I don't want that. I want to see all my signs a little bit deeper. Now you may see I've got quite a long piece of line between my dibber one, and even with my F1 shallow I can move that down to suiting. The venue's quite clear here at the clay pit. The fish can be spooky, so the last thing you want is a short lash just spooking them fish. A nice long lash still gives you control of the float, but helps you connect to the fish because they're more confident and they feed more aggressively. Now the hook lengths are both the same, both shottings the same, but slightly different size hook lengths. Now on the deeper rig I've got a 3-inch hook length of 013 to a 16 GPM, and at the minute I've got a band. Now you hear me speak before, I'm going to start off with a red pellet on the hook just so it's nice and visible, but if I need to I can nip that off, put a size 14 GPM on, spade end hook if I need a visible bait and I want to hook it. Now on the dibber rig I've got a 2-inch. This because, like I said before, the fish can come really shallow on slot. They can poke their heads into it looking for food. You can catch them say 4 to 6 inches deep. Now with a 2-inch hook length it just allows me to look in proportion with that. Both bulks are tight on the hook length if you want to go straight down and be nice and aggressive. So there's the rigs. So let's get on to the fishing and the techniques of feeding. We're on a pleasure session today, so we've been feeding it up for probably 10 to 15 minutes. Now with slop fishing it's really important to get regularity of your feeding, so that every 15 seconds or so you're plopping a ball in. This is because it creates a cloud in the upper layers for the fish to come and dart through. So all we've been doing is simply dipping our hands in our water. So I'm going to dip my hands in the water and making a little putty. Now it's probably the size of a little conker, say about 10 or 12 mil, and it's been throwing it in. Now it's really important to dip your hand into the water, make your little putty up, chuck your putty in and dip it back into the water. This just keeps you all clean, your pole's not dirty, you're not going to get your pants covered in ground bait. Last thing you want is to keep doing it and have ground bait everywhere. It'll be all over you, it'll be on your hat, behind your ears, on your face, everywhere. So that water on your side tray just enables you to throw it a lot neater and also just keep you clean. Now I've got a towel on my side, but if I just keep literally popping my hands into the water, I can throw my slop in, just one ball hitting the surface, and fish are concentrated to that. Now we're starting the session, there's fish there already, we can see some swirls and signs, but I'm going to start on my deepest rig just to see what's there and what's about. Sometimes them fish come to the surface, but you can't catch them. There's the feeding ones underneath them. So literally I'm just going to keep the regularity going every 10 seconds. Now you may be thinking, well, where do you throw this slop? Now ideally at venues where it's allowed, some places are not allowed to throw ground bait or soil in. Now here at Weston we're allowed to do that, so basically all I've done is I've gone to the limit I can throw it. So I know every time if I throw it as far as I can, it's going to hit the same spot every time. The last time, you want it, literally you don't want to be like throwing it too short, too far, be in the middle, the fish moving around everywhere. You want it in the same spot, that same regularity of splash. Now if you can't achieve this by throwing, you can always use a little cab pot, but you have to be a lot more busier shipping in and out. Now your roller position is important there as well, nice and high, so you can just ship out. There's no bobbing up and down of your pole. You can just fill your pot up with your slop, go back out dead quickly. But enough of that, let's get some fishing done. So like I said, I'm just going to start on a deeper rig just to see what we can catch. We might be changing it, so I'm just going to slip on a 4mm red pellet. Like I said before, it's nice and visual for them fish. Now I'm not going to put a cab pot on. Literally going to get about halfway to my mark, dip my hands in the water and throw some slop in. And straight away I'm going to flick that rig straight over the top of my slop and spike straight away. So you slap it in and I'm ready going from the other ball there. So I've had a few signs there. And I'll lift and drop it. Like I said before, if you get some signs, they're fishing the peg, you can always put the little dibber rig on, but just keep that regular feed going in. When your ball of slop goes in, just lift your rig out, place it in the middle. See the sign then straight away. So what we found is straight away the fish could be shallower. So what I'm going to do, just going to put this down. I'm going to try my dibber rig, say about 12-inch deep. Same again, I'm just going to use 4mm red pellet. Make sure that elastic's nice and tight at the end. It's the same process again, so dip my hands in the water, throw it out as far as you can, flick that rig into the middle of your slop. One swirled on it then. So now you're fishing nice and shallow where them fish are. Make a bit of noise with your float as well. Try and trick one to thinking there's a ball of slop gone in, but regular feed. Oops. Pull the elastic out that one. Keep that loose feed going in of that slop. So you can just give it a slap over. And that slop goes in, just drop it in the middle of it. There we go, there's one. It's often the case when you hook one, you just pull your elastic out. So have a chipping back. It's always important just to keep that plough going into the water. Now this works for all sizes of F1s. You can catch massive ones, little stockies. For a net this, I'm just going to feed again just to make sure. There's loads of F1s there waiting for us. Try and get him. Lovely and golden down the clay pit. I think it's the clear water makes them all golden. Bit of a fighter, have to feed again. So that regularity, just keep that slop going in. It's effectively not feeding the fish, it's just drawing them in. Scrap of this fella. There we go, look at that one. Beautiful golden F1. So just hold him up. Might be a bit lively, but they're the stamp that you can catch on this slop F1 shallow. So we'll unhook him. We'll try and catch another one. Like I said before, if you feel you're not neat enough with your feed, you can always put a little cab pot on. But I'm just going to slip that 4mm pellet on again. Make sure my elastic's nice and tight. Dip our hands in our water. Throwing our slop out. Actually seen a few fish there then. There we go. That's why it's important that regular plop of that slop going in keeps the fish up in the higher layers. Now one thing I'm going to do in a minute is literally, a bit smaller one, literally take a bit of depth off because the fish have come high up into the cloud. So, lovely little F1. Nailed that 4mm pellet. That's what you want when they're coming through that cloud, they're dashing through, searching for any feed, and your hook bait's the only feed in there, so they'll come flying to you. So all I'm going to do is take about 2 inches off. So I'll be fishing about 10 inches deep now. Now, because we've got a few fish in the peg, I'm literally going to put the pot on, just so I've got another hit. So when we go, so I'm going to put the pot there, just going to feed before we go out. There's a fish there waiting. So the next plop that's going to be with the cab pot is going to be my one, my pot pellet. So just literally plop it in and got your hook bait straight over the top. The fish is swirling. Give it a slap. We'll go again. Feed again. It's a bit further back, that one. Let's try the cab pot again. You bring the cab pot back, dip your hands in the water, fill it up, ship out to your mark. Do it from a height, say 6 foot above the water, so it makes a nice plot, and lower your pellet straight in the middle of it. Find them F1s come straight up to it. Come as a look at it. Now one thing that's really important is to keep the consistency of slop at what you need it. Now what I mean by this is when, pull my last out, that one made me jump. Now what you need is, because I'm dripping in some water constantly, there's some water spilling into my slop. So what this actually does is it makes my slop wetter than it needs to be. So what you'll find is when you throw it, there'll be some little splats come off it. That's the last thing you want. You just want that solid ball to go in. Little F1. So you want that solid ball to hit the water, then fish concentrated on that one. There you go. Another F1. And that's perfectly hooked, that one. Right in the top lip. Bang on with the red pellet. So, said before, now we're concentrating with our cab pot. Loose feeding, we're keeping an eye on our slot, whether we need to add some ground bait. We're always tweaking it. So, whatever we need to do with it, we can always do. So we can add more ground bait and make it wetter. Whatever it needs to be. Now one thing is, if them fish come really high in the water, I can literally make it into a soup and pour it in. This enables me to keep them fish attracted into the water and gets a couple of feeds off it, but in a minute they're coming to this little ball we're chucking in. Missed a bite of that one. Just splat on the water, lift your rig straight into it. Give it a lift and drop to try and antagonise any. There you go, there's one. So as he's left the peg now, get some slop and chuck it in. So it's all about being in a routine, being nice and regular. That's what you're looking for, like any style of fishing, just that regular pattern. Keep them fish up in the water. Another little F1, a lovely little fish. Scrappers on him. Look at that. Can't beat them. So we're going to slip him in the net. Try and catch another one. Right, so we've been fishing now for about 2 or 3 hours and we're coming to the end of the session now. Now the fishing's been fantastic here on the clay pit. We've caught loads of big F1s on this slop tactic, but they've been quite tricky to catch and we've had to change a few things up like I spoke about before. Now, a few things we've learned is the number of fish in your peg determines on how your mix is. So what I mean by this is when there's a lot of fish in your peg, we can get away with a really wet, sloppy mix, bring them fish high up in the layers of the water. Now when the fish drift off, after you've catched a few, after you've finned them out, which can happen, the fish drop a little bit deeper and you have to firm your mix up slightly to catch them fish a little bit deeper. Now one thing we've learned as well, and you'll see in a minute when I go back out now, is the importance of a pole pot. Now these cab pots, I've been throwing my slop, attracting loads of fish in, but when I put the cab pot on the end, it just gives me a little bit quicker bite. Nice and accurate, nice and neat. I can literally plop my ball in, drop my float straight in on it and catch one straight away. So what I do is catch a few more for you now, but remember the few important tips I've given you. Always use your water before you touch your slop. So slop's in the pot, touch the water. So what I'm going to do is put my pole together again, throw my slop out to my mark. Now if you can see any fish, you can literally give it a flick in. There's one swirled there, so I'm just going to flick the rig in before I drop any slop in. Just because there might be a chance of one for the fish to take it. If not, go for my height, bang my pole, drop my slop in, lower it in. Now the best depth has been about 12 inches on the dibber rig. We've had a few fish that have come really high, but the best rig has been this 12-inch dibber rig. Just because the fish are sitting a little bit deeper today, whether it's the water colour, not too coloured for them, a little bit clear, a little bit spooky. Yes, you can get runs at say 6 to 10 inches deep, but to be consistent, I've found just fishing this 12 inches is best. And what I'll do, if I don't get a bite off this feed, I'm going to come back and feed with a pot again. Just so, bite there. Nice and accurate and nice and busy. Just with that pot you can make a nice big splat on the water. Fish hear that and they come straight into it. So what I'm going to do, before I come back, just feed once. Tiny little ball in the water, pick up my slop, dry my hands off and ship back out. Put it in straight away, just going to lower it down, put it in the middle of that ball. One thing you find, the fish might drop a little bit deeper. Just keep that regular loose feed going into that slot. It attracts them all the time. And coming in. Now often I've found you get your bites either straight away or when you've settled a little bit. So what they find is when the clouds just disappearing slightly, then fish coming in looking for anything that's left. Your hook bait's there and they nail it, like that one. See, that was a little bit of time after I was about to feed then, so I can feed another ball. That's what I was saying, I think when the fish come in, there's not much cloud, they're losing the cloud, they're losing the cover over their head. Come in panicking, pick your red up bait out, and you catch them straight away. Now the two ways we caught them is either like that, or we've caught them straight away as soon as that splats hit the water. That's when there's a lot of fish in the peg, but there's another one there now. Fantastic weight builders, these F1s. It's a lovely little stamp. Ooh, lively still, netted him a bit quick, but lovely stamp. Try and unhook him, he's a bit angry this one. So I'm just trying to catch one more. Do is stick another red pellet on. Little 4mm Robin red pellet's been best today. Tried a 6 a few times, but little 4mm has been perfect. And like I said, just keep that slop going through your peg all the time before you go out. If there's any fish lingering, they'll be there waiting for your next splat on the water, and that's going to have your hook bait in. Again, do it from a height about 6 foot above. Get it down, just lower it down. Give it a little last drop. Just be nice and patient. Give it 10 to 15 seconds, say, before you chuck your another ball in again. Just so that any fish that are in the area come in looking for it. Like I said, they're quite tricky to catch today, even though there's been a few fish about. Quite tricky. Another ball gone in there. Lower it straight on it. Ooh, missed that one. So you see what I mean? We either get the bites today as soon as that slop hits the water and our rig's in position, or we have to wait a little bit. So they're the only two ways you've been caught today. It's just important to keep that regular slop going in. See there, it's getting a bit wet now because I've put some water through it. Just give it a slap before I chuck it in again. That's why it's important just to keep moving it all the time. There we go. Don't be too lazy about it, straight back. Let's give it a quick feed before we fill our pot up. Splat it on the water. Drop your rig in amongst it. There you go. You see, by being nice and efficient, nice and busy, you can keep putting fish in your net. So I'll make this the last one. Hopefully it's a nice F1. Try not to lose him. Just take your time with him. There we go. So let's take a look at him. Last fish of the day. Lovely F1 from the clay pit at Weston. So let's have a look at what we've caught using this deadly slop tactic. So there we go. Just a fine selection of F1s we've caught using deadly tactics, slop up in the water, catching loads of F1s. So hopefully you can put it into your fishing this summer and catch more. So let's slip them back.